When I pulled into Grandma's driveway that Friday afternoon, I expected to find her pruning her roses, humming. Or maybe lecturing the squirrels again. Instead, she sat stiffly in her rocking chair, staring at a crisp white envelope on the doormat like it was a venomous snake. The bold HOA logo in the corner told me everything I needed to know. Trouble had arrived. Grandma had always kept to herself. Always followed the rules. Even the ridiculous ones like no holiday decorations larger than 30 inches and front yard plants must be pre-approved. Yet there it was. The unmistakable mark of HOA drama. I picked up the envelope and scanned the accusations. According to the HOA Compliance Division, my sweet, 76-year-old grandmother had been operating an unlicensed business from her property. The letter claimed residents had reported frequent customer traffic, sales occurring on the porch, and commercial activity inconsistent with neighborhood zoning. My eyebrows shot up. Grandma. A secret business queenpin. I imagined her in dark sunglasses selling black market zucchini. But she just looked tired. When I asked what this was about, she sighed, pressing a hand to her forehead. It's Karen, Grandma whispered. The way some folks say, hurricane. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. Karen, the HOA president whose binoculars were practically glued to her face. Karen treated the bylaws like scripture. And herself like the prophet sent to enforce them. She was the type to lecture children for drawing chalk hopscotch on the sidewalk because it altered community aesthetics. Still, accusing Grandma of running a business was a new low, even for her. Grandma explained that she'd recently started leaving excess vegetables on a small table near the porch, tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, all free for anyone who wanted them. After months spent gardening to keep busy, she realized she had more produce than she could eat. She'd never accepted money. A little handwritten sign even said, "Please take some. Enjoy." Apparently, someone had seen neighbors picking up veggies and assumed Grandma was selling them. Or rather, Karen had assumed it. And once Karen assumed, the HOA parroted it without question. She said, "I'm disturbing the peace," Grandma muttered. "That I'm creating pedestrian congestion." Pedestrian congestion. For 5 cucumbers and a handful of cherry tomatoes. She shook her head as if trying to dislodge the absurdity. I felt frustration rise in me. Grandma had lived here longer than most of the HOA board combined. She'd never even had a parking violation. Now she was accused of running some underground produce cartel. I told her we'd fight it, every line, every ridiculous claim. Grandma smiled weakly, saying she hoped common sense would win. I wasn't so optimistic. 2 days later, the HOA launched what they called a formal investigation. In reality, it was 3 board members marching up Grandma's driveway like they were raiding a criminal hideout. Karen led the group, clutching a clipboard and wearing an expression that suggested triumph was already assured. She greeted Grandma with the tight smile of someone who enjoys saying the word violation. I stood beside Grandma, arms folded, determined not to let Karen's theatrics go unchecked. Karen began by inspecting the porch with exaggerated precision, snapping pictures of the vegetable table as if documenting evidence of a major crime. "You see," she said, pointing dramatically at a basket of tomatoes. "This setup clearly indicates commercial intent." Her co-workers nodded with practiced seriousness. I couldn't stop myself from responding, "Karen, it's a table with free vegetables. You can even take one if you want. No profit. No business." But Karen dismissed me with a wave of her hand, claiming that exchange of goods constituted commerce, even if no money changed hands. That logic, of course, would make Halloween an illegal operation. Grandma tried to explain, kindly as always, that she simply enjoyed gardening and didn't want good produce going to waste. She even showed Karen the sign that said everything was free. But Karen insisted that multiple neighbors had reported seeing transactions, meaning someone had once said, "Thank you," and Grandma replied with her usual, "You're welcome." Apparently, gratitude was now payment. The board members circled the porch again, writing notes like they were compiling a case for the Supreme Court. Karen paused to ask Grandma how often she restocked inventory, which nearly made me laugh out loud. Grandma answered honestly that she harvested vegetables twice a week. Karen treated this information like smoking gun evidence. Then came the true absurdity. Karen announced she had been monitoring activity, which meant she had been standing at her window with binoculars. She claimed the foot traffic levels were comparable to a small-scale retail setup, a statement so dramatically unhinged that even one board member looked embarrassed. The most people Grandma ever saw at once was 3 neighborhood kids grabbing cherry tomatoes after bike rides. Before leaving, Karen handed Grandma a notice demanding she remove the table immediately or risk fines of up to $500. Grandma's face fell. The sweetness of her hobby had been twisted into something ugly. As the board retreated down the path, I promised Grandma we wouldn't let the HOA bully her. If Karen wanted a fight, she'd get one, just not the kind she expected. Grandma might have been soft-spoken, but she wasn't a pushover. After years of raising 3 kids, surviving the loss of her husband, and teaching hundreds of middle schoolers, one stubborn HOA president wasn't enough to break her. The next morning, she brewed a full pot of tea, sat down at her kitchen table, and drafted what she called her Declaration of Reasonable Human Behavior. It was essentially a polite yet devastatingly thorough response to every accusation in Karen's complaint. Grandma outlined her gardening routine, included timestamps of when she harvested vegetables, and referenced HOA bylaw sections to prove she wasn't violating any rules. She even attached pictures of the produce sign and statements from neighbors confirming everything was free. Watching her, I realized she had more legal writing skill than most attorneys. When she finished, she looked up at me with the determined gleam I'd only seen when she played Scrabble competitively. "Karen wants a war," she said calmly. "I'll give her paperwork." But the real turning point came later that afternoon. Several neighbors, those who regularly benefited from Grandma's little produce stand, showed up at her door after hearing rumors of the supposed business. There was Mrs. Delaney from across the street, who swore the cherry tomatoes had single-handedly cured her summer grumpiness. There was Mark, a single dad who said his daughter looked forward to Grandma's cucumbers more than candy. And there were 3 teenagers carrying handwritten signs reading, "Free veggies are not a crime." The sight brought Grandma to tears, though she tried to hide it. The neighbors insisted on attending the upcoming HOA meeting to defend her. Some were quiet, some fiery, but all were united. For once, Karen's reign of clipboard tyranny had pushed people too far. They were done letting her operate like the self-appointed sheriff of suburbia. When the day of the meeting came, Grandma didn't walk in alone. She entered with half the block behind her. The room, normally empty except for Karen and her loyal board, filled until the chairs ran out. Karen's expression tightened as she realized this wasn't going to be the easy victory she expected. Grandma presented her case with calm grace, reading her statement clearly and offering evidence with gentle precision. When Karen attempted to interrupt, the crowd actually booed, quietly but effectively. One neighbor even asked Karen how binocular surveillance aligned with HOA privacy guidelines. A question Karen pretended not to hear. By the time Grandma finished, even the board members looked uncomfortable siding with Karen. It was the first time Grandma truly believed she might win. When the HOA board finally retreated to a private room to deliberate, the rest of us waited. In a tense semicircle. Grandma squeezed my hand while the neighbors exchanged theories. Mark speculated. Karen would double down out of pride. Mrs. Delaney believed the board would crack under the weight of common sense. The teenagers debated making protest shirts. The room buzzed like a nervous beehive until the board emerged. 20 minutes later. Karen walked in first, wearing a strained smile that suggested the outcome wasn't what she wanted. One board member cleared his throat and announced the decision. Grandma was not in violation of any HOA rule. The vegetable table was allowed to remain. There had been no evidence of commercial activity, no disruption to neighborhood peace, and no cause for fines. The room erupted into relieved applause. Grandma exhaled shakily, tears sparkling in her eyes. Karen, meanwhile, tightened her grip on her clipboard as though it might help her regain control of the situation. But then came the additional announcement, one Karen clearly hadn't anticipated. Due to inappropriate monitoring conduct and overreach of authority, the board was scheduling a vote of confidence regarding Karen's position as HOA president. Essentially, they were asking the community whether she should stay in power. The shock on Karen's face was priceless. For once, her binoculars and bylaw obsession had backfired spectacularly. The neighbors murmured with satisfaction. Several even patted Grandma on the back, thanking her for standing up not just for herself but for everyone tired of Karen's micromanagement. Grandma, being who she was, approached Karen afterward and offered her a small bag of fresh tomatoes. The gesture was sincere, a peace offering from someone who wanted harmony more than victory. Karen stared at the tomatoes as though they were radioactive. She muttered something unintelligible and hurried away, as the rest of us exchanged amused looks. In the following weeks, the neighborhood felt different, lighter. People stopped by Grandma's porch more often. Sometimes for vegetables, sometimes just to chat. The table became a symbol of friendliness rather than controversy. Kids drew chalk vegetables on the sidewalk, and no one dared erase them. The vote eventually took place. And though Karen wasn't removed entirely, her power was limited. She no longer patrolled with binoculars. She no longer handed out frivolous citations. Her clipboard stayed tucked under her arm with noticeably less vigor. As for Grandma, she kept gardening. She kept giving. And every time she restocked the vegetable table, she smiled with quiet pride. In standing up to Karen and winning, she reminded everyone that kindness isn't a weakness. Sometimes, it's the strongest force in a community.